it's been going that.
Sheesh.
Well, the reason why I was appealing to Sully was because I wasn't understanding what Matt said, and so I was hoping that Sully did.
Yeah, and what's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, Matt, do you object? Do you object to me asking Sully to try to steel man you at this point?
You guys do what you want. Whatever.
Oh, this is not going to work.
Sorry.
I'm not the boss of you.
I'm just saying, if you object, we won't do it. I mean, I don't want you to be alienated from the conversation. I'm just trying to understand what you're saying, and I thought maybe Sully might have insight into it.
I've already explained what the problem is. Jack, you're a lot smarter than this. I'm seriously surprised you keep asking the same thing after I explained it repeatedly.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to concede that it's a failing on my part. I'm just hoping that somebody else can get it across to me. Somebody else who thinks they understand what you mean by that. Because I thought that by asking, do the words have two different meanings, that would settle the matter. But you didn't seem to think... I had the impression you didn't think that was what you were saying.
And lose you guys again?
No, I'm still here. I'm just trying to...
Sully, you want a steel man?
Yeah, so I've heard people give it this sort of analogy, and again, it's a sort of idea that the person is a composite of two natures, and so people will compare it.
I understand that part. I just want you to explain to me what he means when he says they are mutually exclusive by definition. What does he mean by that?
Right. So he keeps saying exactly what he keeps comparing that to a square circle. So they're mutually exclusive in some kind of conceptual sense like that. And so the analogy that I've heard for this is you think of a knife as a sharp object if its blade can cut through cardboard or whatever, something like that. Its blade can cut through objects. And you might also think of it as a dull object if you're thinking about the handle, because it's a composite of a blade and a handle.
Oh, is that the analogy you're going for, Matt? That's sharp?
No.
And okay, so that's not it. Okay. All right, well,
okay,
somebody else. Yeah, then somebody else have any idea what Matt means?
Can you repeat what I've said to you? What the hypostatic union is?
I mean, I can remember the Chalcedonian formulation, which is one person with two natures. Right?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, but but I think the mystery here is when you say mutually exclusive by definition, it doesn't seem like anybody is stepping forward to help clarify what you mean by that. And as I say, I'm happy to admit it's a failing on my part, but I don't understand what you mean.
Let me try for a fifth time, okay?
Okay.
A human nature is not the same thing as a divine nature, correct?
Yeah.
They exclude each other, right? They can't both be the same thing, right?
Well, that sounds like you're saying that two things that have different properties can't be the same thing. Is that what you're saying?
Two natures. One nature is different than another nature. They're not the same nature. That's all I'm saying. They're different.
Okay, so you're just saying to be human, you're saying that a human is by definition not divine, and God is by definition.
No. A human nature is by definition not also a divine nature.
Okay, so you just want to say that the natures are distinct. But I thought the Chalcedonian view was that they're not distinct.
No,
am
they're
I wrong?
Distinct. Yeah, you're wrong. They're distinct.
But Tom was piping up to say that.
I was piping up. That's wrong. I was piping up because he was saying he was giving analogies like an orange and an apple in a bag, which would entail separation and division.
Right. They're not
And
separate.
I was
They're not
making,
separate.
I piped up. Hold on a second. I piped up because he was saying things that indicated separation and division to the point where he was saying that they are, separated. Might even use those words at one
So,
point.
are you saying that they're separate, the two natures?
Wow. Yes, they're separate, distinct natures. A human nature is not the same thing as a divine nature.
But
That's a
Tom, you're
different
saying,
sense of.
oh,
That's a
you're saying it's a different
of
sense of
separate.
separate. Okay.
A cat is
So
not the same thing as a dog. A house is not the same thing as a catfish.
All right.
They're
Well,
different.
okay. I think I can work with what you're saying. Now, do you think that a human nature is essentially a nature that does not have the property of omnipotence?
Yes, that's
actually,
correct.
can I say something to you, Jack, really quick? Not to
Yeah, go
interrupt.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, if that's what he's trying to claim he means when he says that the natures are separate, then I don't really think he can mean that because he's representing like he's in accord with Chalcedon. And when Chalcedon says the Chalcedon says that the natures are not separate. And if Matt is using the definition that he's using, that would mean that the natures are not distinct because that's the way he's using separate.
No, I'm not. That's not it. What we're talking about is just simple logic. Okay? A cat is distinct from a dog. One is not the other. Okay? They're distinct.
Yep.
They're separate categories. The nature category of being divine is separate, distinct from the category of being human. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I understand you perfectly. Now the second question is, in Chalcedon, when it says that the natures are not separate and there is no division, is that the same sense of separation which you just outlined just now?
I'd have to read the context and see what they meant by that. Because just because it's an old creed doesn't mean it's always right. And what the creeds did was deal with issues at that time that were prevalent. And they wrote at the level, addressing the heresies at that time. What we have now is the teaching, the knowledge that the one person has two distinct natures, but they're in union with each other. I wouldn't say they are separated, unless you say they're distinct by ontos, but they're in union in the one person. That's all.
And that's how it describes it, as in being in union with no separation or division.
I don't know what that means, no separation or division, because you have to, if two things are in union, by definition, there's separation between them. Otherwise, they couldn't be in union. They'd be the same thing.
Well, I don't think it means that. It means like some sort of like seamless melding of two things.
There are different doctrines or heresies that have come up regarding this issue. One is called Nestorianism, in that the body of Christ are two different persons, a divine person and a human person. That's false. Monophysitism would say that the two natures became a new third nature, called mono, one, physit form, and that's false. Eutychianism is the error that the two natures of Christ are so intermixed, they're not distinguishable. The separation between them is basically a moot issue. That's also false. The correct teaching is called the hypostatic union. Hypo, under. In the one person are two natures, a divine nature and a human nature. Hypostatic union. The attributes of both natures are ascribed to the single person. That's called the communication of the properties. That's Christian theology. Okay?
Can you give that to me? I noticed you said communication of the properties. Could you please give that to Latin as to like seem more authoritative?
Yeah.
That's of all the times that I've ever heard you speak, I've almost never heard you pass up an opportunity to speak Latin to sound smarter. Is this real? The real Matt Slick?
Hey, I enjoy your ribbing. That's nice. Yeah, the communicatio idiomatum. That's what it's called.
That's more like it.
Right. Right.
But is Sully still here?
Yeah.
If he's saying that that it's a essential property of a human nature that such an well, I don't know how to phrase it exactly. He's saying that omnipotence is essentially not a part of that such a nature.
The what nature?
A human nature. A human nature.
Yeah, right.
Like it's essentially ruled out. So the idea is that part of the essence of being a human is that you are not omniscient. Or did you say omnipotent?
Well, how about
Omnipotent.
omnipresent? You can say omnipresent. That would be a
Right. Well,
better one.
any whichever one. It doesn't matter. But then, if that is essentially a property, if that property that's essentially not a part of the human nature is essentially a part of the divine nature, then it does seem like there's going to be a contradiction.
No, because they're properties of different natures. How's that a contradiction?
Well, because we would just ask, is Jesus omnipotent?
Yes.
Is Jesus not omnipotent?
He grew in wisdom and stature, Luke 2:52, made for a little while lower than the angels, Hebrews 2:9, made under the law, Galatians 4:10. So he had to do things under the requirements of the law. And we know from what's called the Carmen Christi in Philippians 2:5-8. I could quote it to you guys if you want while I'm walking, but he emptied himself. We don't know exactly what that means, but there's some cooperation with limitations of being a man. And so he was said to be all knowledgeable, and he never rejected that. And there's other things we can get into, but yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying that Jesus is simultaneously omnipotent and not omnipotent. Is that right?
Well, now this is a good question. This is a good place to be discussing this, because there are just discussions on how the hypostatic union and the communication of the properties work together. And we just don't know, all right? We know that Jesus said, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the earth. I mean, that requires ubiquity. And yet he said, I'm thirsty, which requires humanity. So he claimed the attributes of both natures. How those work together, we just don't know. Okay?
So,
But it's a
go ahead.
contradiction.
Yeah, it does sound like a contradiction. It sounds like you're saying Jesus is omnipotent. It's also the case that Jesus is not omnipotent.
And that would be a contradiction.
But you're not saying that, is that right?
No, what I'm saying is we don't know, we theologians don't know exactly how it works. Because
so you're saying,
we know that the divine attributes are ascribed to the person of Christ. He knew people's hearts. He was able to raise people from the dead. He was able to prophesy. He calmed a storm with a command. Well, these are the divine qualities and attributes that he worked. Yet he also got tired, had to go to the bathroom. He slept. He was thirsty. And so what we see in Scripture is both of these ascribed to him as a single person. Now, what does that mean then? Does he, as Nestorians would erringly say, one nature speaks, another nature speaks? That doesn't work like that. And I get into that with oneness Pentecostal heretics. But it is a mystery to a point. It is, okay?
Yeah, but it's just really simple. P and not P currently. Jesus was omnipotent. Jesus was not omnipotent. Now, when asked if that's a contradiction, you didn't really say yes or no. You just said, we don't know how it works. Now, on paper, it's a contradiction, right?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say P and also not P. We don't know. We don't know to what extent Jesus knew or did not know. We don't know. Now, people say, well, he said he didn't know the date or the hour. Well, that's an idiomatic expression dealing with the wedding feast. But Peter said to him, you know all things. He didn't say, no, I don't. He simply continued on. There's plenty of evidence to show that, yeah, he did know all things, but he didn't access it or, divulge it to people all the time.
Was he omnipotent or not?
Yes, he could do whatever he desired. Yep.
Okay, and it's not the case that he was not omnipotent.
He was omnipotent. He could do whatever he desired to do.
And so the examples that you gave in the scriptures that you cited were Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, and he didn't know things, blah blah blah. That was not you giving an example of Jesus being not omnipotent, correct?
Omnipotent is different than knowledge, omniscience.
Or whatever. You could switch
Excuse
it
me,
to
I
omniscient.
just misspoke. I just misspoke. That's all.
Okay, so we don't know. It says grew in wisdom and stature. For example, how about this? How was the Word, which is the Creator, God, how was he in the womb of Mary? I don't know. How did he grow? In what sense? I don't know. Did he cooperate with limitations of being a man? Well, how does that work? There's just a lot of things we can't answer. We just don't know. What we do know is what the scriptures reveal. That he claimed, according to the Old Testament prophecies of God in flesh. I can give you the Old Testament references for that. And that's who he was. That's what he claimed to be. Okay, so I can do my best to try and answer questions, but there's only at some point I'm going to say the rest of it, we just can't answer because the scriptures don't tell us.
Yeah, but you're okay. You have a position that Jesus the person was omniscient. Now, you therefore cannot have the position that he was not omniscient. Simple, right?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's not like, oh, we don't know, it says this, it says that. You do not think it's the case that he was not omniscient, because you do think it's the case that he was omniscient.
Now, when we say he was, here's the statement I'll repeat again. We don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us, if he was accessing the properties of both natures at all time.
It's either he was omniscient or not omniscient.
The divine nature is always omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent. Jesus says in John 5:19, John 5:30, he said, I can only do what I see the Father doing. That's called inseparable operations. What that is saying is that he was able, in his divine quality, even as a man, to see what God was doing, God the Father, and would do whatever he was able to do. That's an immense claim of divine quality. Now, Peter said in John 21, Jesus, Lord, you know all things. And Jesus didn't say, no, I don't. So so when he says, and the only one I have any challenge with, personally, is Luke 2:52, when it says he grew in wisdom and stature. I don't understand what that means. I know what it apparently means, but I don't know what it means in relationship to Christ.
Well, it doesn't mean that Jesus, the person Jesus, was not omniscient, right?
The divine nature was never omniscient, never not omniscient. And again, I'll say this, yet again, we don't know if Jesus was accessing all of the divine attributes at all time.
Okay, and I have something to say yet again, possibly even more times. Every time I say Jesus the person was omniscient, you reply with referencing a nature. Matt, yet again, I'm asking and talking about Jesus the person. I very carefully chose my words. I never once asked about a nature or properties with respect to a nature. I'm asking about there's one entity, which is Jesus the person. He might have two natures, three natures, whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. My question is about a singular object, person, Jesus the person. Jesus the person is omnipotent by your lights, correct?
Yeah, he's omnipotent.
Okay, is he also not omnipotent?
No, he's also not omnipotent.
Okay, there you go. He's just flat out omnipotent.
And define omnipotence.
I'm sorry. I'm misspeaking in omniscient. Omniscient. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
Sometimes some people
omniscient.
roll omnipotent into a bunch of other things, but I'm specifically talking about omniscience.
Okay, so define omniscience.
Something like he knows all true propositions or something like that.
And counterfactuals and everything. Yeah, okay, yeah. By the divine essence, of course. Yeah.
What do you mean? Yeah, you asked me a question. I answered it. And then are you prompting me for something more than my answer? I don't.
He wants to know what's the problem. He wants to know what the problem is.
It's now the case that I've solved a problem for you. When you're like, well, I don't know what it means here when it says this. I don't know exactly what it's saying when it says Jesus grew in wisdom instead. Could it be that we now know that it doesn't mean that he was not omniscient to where he didn't have certain knowledge or propositional knowledge or counterfactual knowledge or something like that. Right? I, the atheist, have solved the riddle for you.
What? You're not making any sense to me.
Well, I'll let me put it even clearer. I'll do it again. You said, you referenced the passage that when Jesus says he grew in wisdom and stature, you said, we don't really know what that means. And I'm telling you, well, that's not entirely true, because you know what it doesn't mean, in a sense, right? Because you have an idea of what omniscience is. And that's when you said that knowing all propositional knowledge and knowledge of counterfactuals, right? And so when it's talking about Jesus not knowing things in the passage that you gave me, it can't be talking about that, because you said that Jesus, the person, is omniscient. So it can't be referring to that.
So what was the answer I gave to you twice?
You gave me an answer twice that the divine nature is omniscient.
No, that's something different. Go ahead. See, you're not listening to me. You don't listen to my answers.
You've given many answers. I mean, the answer
Oh,
to
boy.
which question then?
Oh, come on. Seriously? What are we talking about? Zebras?
What's the question you're asking about? You did say that twice, so I'm not incorrect about that.
Look, Jesus has two natures. For in him dwells all the fullness of deity in bodily form, Colossians 2:9. Jesus knew all things, as was stated. In Luke 2:52, there's a statement, and this is the only statement that gives me intellectual pause, which just suggests I don't understand how all of it works. In that verse, when he was 12, he got lost. He wasn't really lost, but with the families in a caravan. They found him. Anyway, he said, he grew in wisdom and stature. Well, this is obviously relating to the human aspect because of his stature, talking about his humanity. He's growing there. He was very wise already. Now, if you want to say he didn't know all things, then you have to tell me how he didn't know all things. But if you want to say, well, his human nature, the divine nature automatically always did, great, I have no problem with that. The question then becomes, was he participating actively in that property of the divine nature at that time? I don't know. You see, I'm a man, I'm 67, I'm walking, I'm not urinating. But because I'm not urinating doesn't mean that that's not a potentiality within me.
Yeah, I'm just not goddamn diaper, motherfucker.
This is just some troll.
Get the diapers, the diaper
he'll be
idiots out of
taken
here.
care.
Okay. So it doesn't mean that because I'm not accessing one property or characteristic at a time doesn't mean it's not possessed. It means that it's latent within. This is what I think is happening with the issue of Jesus being in a womb. What was going on there? I just don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us. So this doesn't mean that he wasn't accessing such properties. It might be that they were latent within him because of necessity by the attributes of both natures of the one person, the communicatio idiomatum. It might be that, and yet he just wasn't accessing them the way I don't access certain attributes of my own quality, but I do at different times. It doesn't mean I'm not a person. There's not a contradiction in that.
Yeah, and so the human nature is by definition not omniscient, right?
Okay. I've already explained. You guys obviously don't want to submit to the lordship of Jesus Christ. You don't want to submit to the work he's done. You want to find out ways to denounce him, to find a way to deny him so that you can retain your own independence, your own sovereignty.
Yeah. So,
hey, excuse me. I'm letting you talk. Why the mockery? I'm sitting here telling you.
When you get to this point, you're done talking. You're not engaging anymore.
I'm giving you answer after answer the same time. You guys work hard at trying to find something to object about him.
When you get to this point, you're done. You're finished.
And I think,
okay,
Matt,
I'll go to another room. Not a problem.
You're not going to say anything more anyway. Go ahead. There's no threat.
Wait, before you go, Matt, let me just try to lay out exactly what the problem we're having is.
He's gone. He wasn't gonna the whole.
Yeah, I know he
was.
wasn't, but I wanted to sort of repeat the point that you were trying to make, because he had granted that Jesus was a man, and he had granted that Jesus is God, obviously, right? And he said that a human being, we established that a man is a human being, right? I got him to agree to that.
Yeah,
And
I get it.
he said that a human being is he said that a human nature essentially does not have, one of the properties of a human nature is that it is essentially not an omnipotent nature, right?
Yeah, that was the actual killing blow where he coincidentally left, is because
Yeah, because I wanted to repeat that. Just so that,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, we can try it again next time he comes. But that, he really, I wonder how does John Lee feel right now? he basically just straightforwardly contradicted himself. Like, this is the guy that John looks up to, right? And he just straightforwardly contradicted himself, because he agreed that Jesus is a man, right? And men are essentially not omnipotent. So if Jesus is omnipotent, he's also not omnipotent, which is a contradiction. There's just...
Yeah, but I already got him to say that the person Jesus is not omnipotent. So
yeah, but that's just contradicting his idea that a man,
right,
which
well,
Jesus is...
Jack, that was the killing blow. That's
no,
why
I know.
I'm
I'm appreciating what you did. You know,
That was the good part.
I just wanted to lay it out this sort of different way. You know,
right, I understand.
I'll just do that another time. You know, when we catch him in a good mood again. You know, I can just recapitulate all that.
Well,
It's not that he's getting ganged up on. The minute he gets into trouble, he's going to be like, I can't talk to three of you at once.
I understand
and that's
that.
his escape hatch.
No,
That's
I
what I was
understand.
trying to avoid.
But I
Jack
finessed
actually
it.
set a trap against that.
Yeah, because I said, well, let me appeal to Matt.
And then he said he was fine with it, so he couldn't have employed that. And
I finessed it, Haiti.